So this is the interview matrix that each one of the interviewers is going to get. There's different people on there, and if there's 5 people that are interviewing the candidates, there's going to be 5 different candidates, and later I'll show you how you mix them. So you're going to calculate the results next. You're going to calculate an individual's total points by multiplying the rating points by the weight factor assigned. And then you must add the job skill points and the interview question points to calculate the score. So here's a master matrix after you've calculated everyone's interviewer matrices. You put them all together, you average them out into one final matrix. If there's any large deviations in the matrix, you should have a selection panel or a hiring supervisor determine what went wrong or who they recommend for the final interviews. So next I'm going to do my new and you, and I had an internship with Home Goods over the summer. It's where I've been employed for the last 5 years. Over the summer they asked if I wanted to sit in on some interviews, kind of like a panel, and I gained a lot of experience from doing so. We went through the interview, and then after the interview, we took a tour of the store, and I spoke to the candidate one-on-one. I gave them some insight on like what the job entailed, kind of gained like general knowledge, and was able to classify them in my head almost like a matrix. And as I was discussing things and hearing their feedback, so after they had left, my manager came to me and asked me if what my feedback was on the potential person. I didn't really believe that they were skilled enough to do it per se, and I gave some support, kind of rated them, and I guess they agreed with me because they ended up not hiring them. So next up is Sean, physical exams.
Thank you, Dave. My name is Sean, and I will start talking about physical exams. So reasons for physical exams, first we need to figure out if the candidate is physically fit for the job. We don't want them stressing. Also to prevent injury. If they're not able to handle the job, why would we put them in that situation? And health, if overall they're healthy for insurance reasons and for costs. So how much is a physical exam? If you are under any Cigna plans, the cost would be covered entirely. If you're not fully covered, it could be ranging from $10 to $50. And these are just copays, so the national average copay is $19. United One copay is $35. New health insurance would be from around $200. Pre-employment exams. So the pre-employment exams, you would just have a physical exam, and the basic one would just be hearing and vision tests. Second would be further examination if you were to be in a job where you require a mask, so that would be lung capacity and heart breathing, or heart and breathing. And Americans with Disability Act, also known as ADA, physical exams can be required only if other candidates are required to take it. So if they have a pool of candidates, every single candidate needs to be taking a physical exam. And candidates' medical history is confidential, which will be filed separately from all their I-9s and paperwork, and not used to discriminate against. So when conducting the physical exam, contingent offers can be withdrawn if no reasonable accommodation the employer could make to allow the candidate to perform the job, and the job must be job-related. It must be job-related, providing the needed accommodation would cause undue hardship. And also, we would talk about drugs and alcohol tests. So abuse of drug and alcohol increases the risk of accidents, such as driving long distances and driving machinery. So if you were a taxi driver or a limo driver, they would kind of look out for driving long distances. And if you were handling machinery such as working at Home Depot or anything like that. And so for drug and alcohol tests continued, it's done through one of 4 ways: urine or hair analysis, breathalyzer, blood tests, and mouth swabs. Most from personal experience, I've seen a lot of urine and hair analysis, only because it's easier and it's probably a better way to tell. Drug panel, so there is a 7-panel drug test, and that is administered by companies or individuals who are concerned an employee might be abusing prescription drugs. Standard 7 is looks for more of marijuana, cocaine, and PCP. 10-panel is for law enforcement or occupational medicine. And then we have the standard 10 drug urine test, which is for basically kind of the same thing as the 10-panel. Looks for marijuana, cocaine, PCP. The 12 looks for extended for opioids and prescription painkillers, and the standard 12 looks for cocaine, ecstasy, and Percocets. So state division on civil rights. Employers may require applicants to undergo a physical examination as long as these two are met. The exam is given after employment and given to all applicants, kind of stated previously. So physical exams, one example would be Coast Guard. So why do they have these certain tests for strength and stamina to see how strong and your stamina safely perform the job? Are they able to perform the job? Lifelong health and fitness. Best way to succeed for this test is to start early training, and they do have a training guide on their website. So some of the requirements would be for the male and female would be push-ups, sit-ups, run, sit, and reach, and complete swim circuit test. And all these, the push-ups and sit-ups are 60 seconds, how much you can do, and tread water in 5 minutes, and jump off platform into pool and swim 100 meters. And then another example would be the New Jersey State Police. So they do a point system, and the higher your points are better. So you also do push-ups, sit-ups, and a 1.5 mile run. You wouldn't want to be, they said that you want to be above or around 4, but 3 is kind of a little low. And here's an example of a physical examination form. There's multiple pages to this, but I can only find this one that wasn't blurry. So some of the questions would be, do you smoke and or drink on a regular basis? Are you currently on any course of medication? Just simple questions, and then the nurse would also fill something out as well. So new and you, I currently work at Rowan University at the information desk in the Student Center, so I handle a lot of customers. I'm good at customer service. I've done that my entire career almost. I deal with faculty, students, ticket sales, things like that. Next, it would be, I had an interview for Beacon Hill Staffing Group. I thought the interview went well. I met with 2 individuals, and then after, it was kind of unexpected of a HR director coming in and asking me questions, so it kind of caught me off guard. I was unable to get the job. They wanted to hire internally. They just recognized that. I also interviewed for Aerotech. Aerotech is another staffing agency, and I thought that I did well as well. It was kind of weird questions at the time, but I asked the woman who interviewed me for some feedback for future reference so I can help, because I will be graduating in December. And then lastly is I have an interview for Robert Half on this Thursday, which I'm pretty excited about. I don't know what to expect because I didn't apply for a specific job. I just asked through LinkedIn, kind of networked, and they sent my resume over, and then they sent it somewhere else. And last is Dina will be talking about offer and final selection.
Hi guys, so I'm going to be, like Sean said, talking about the job offer process and the final selection. So I'm sure everyone in this room has definitely gotten a call for a final offer, and you're probably as excited as this guy, but now we're going to look through the eyes of the human resources professionals. So there are many steps that need to be taken on this end to make sure that this process goes as smoothly as possible. So I'm going to take you through those steps right now. So for the initial steps, first is the verbal offer, which is usually through the phone. Face-to-face is known as the best way, but obviously the phone call is the most popular. So the best way to do this is to schedule the phone call. So you want your top candidates to know that the phone call is coming, so it's a little more professional and on time. So next, after this, I'm going to talk about what to say on the phone. So you want to kind of sell the company and market this job to them. So you want to kind of discuss the common goals, things that they have in common with you, and the goals that you can work on moving forward. You want to also talk about long-term benefits that the job can have for the candidate, and you want to talk about how the candidate can contribute to the company overall. So you also want to talk about some details of the job. You want to talk about the salary, any benefits that could come along with this job, and you also want to touch on some areas that might not have gotten discussed in the interview. So that's such things like paperwork, start date, stuff like that. So that's all going to be covered in the verbal interview as well as the written one as well. So the next thing you want to do is kind of just get a confirmation. Just ask them for a yes or no answer. Hopefully they say yes, and then you want to put the job in writing. So you're going to start with the written offer letter. And now I'm going to go through like a sample written offer letter that will show you kind of like the steps that you can take in the written offer letter. So the first part, in the example I have up on the screen here, you would fill in the red your company's information. So you want to start out with the letterhead, you want to put the date, the recipient's name, company name, and address, like just some basic stuff just to get it started, how you usually address a letter. And then next it's going to be just the body of it. So you want to address them. You're going to talk about the company name, and we feel that your skills and background would be a valuable asset to our team. We're going to talk about basically what you discussed on the phone. So the position you're hiring them for, their start date, all the details you talked about. And you just want to close it by saying we look forward to welcoming you as our new employee at said company, and then address it like that. So the next thing I want to cover is the counteroffer. So the candidate's current place of employment may make a counteroffer to keep their employee. If they're a well-liked employee at that company or their CEO or executive, this is definitely going to happen, and they're going to try and offer them something that they might not be able to refuse. So you want to kind of coach them and just give them some examples. So remind them why they're leaving and the perks of the job you're offering them. So you want to kind of coach them on things that they can say to their current employee that wouldn't kind of get them in kind of like a difficult position on wondering how they're going to leave. So the next process you want to talk about on your end with your team is this concept of how much is too much or how far is too far. So you're going to kind of talk about before you discuss with the employee. You want to kind of talk about how much you'd be willing to offer them. So how many zeros you'd be willing to end to the end of the salary, any perks you'd be able to offer them. You want to know how much you can do before it's too late. So up next, the candidate might be trying to negotiate their salary, which is pretty common. So I have a few good questions you want to kind of keep in mind. So first of all, how close does the candidate meet the needs of the company? Like, could you be able to go with somebody else? How much are the other companies paying for this job title? And an important one is there a change or increase in the cost of living for this person? So once they hopefully accept the offer, you want to go over once more about the paperwork and screenings needed before they start. And make sure they sign the written job offer letter and return this and any of the necessary paperwork needed for their start date. So once this happens, you want to do kind of what's probably the most important is to follow up. So you want the candidate to know that this process is just as important to your company as it is to them. So you want to follow up with them at least a few times before work. They'll feel that they're more at ease coming in on the first day, and hopefully the onboarding process will go a lot more smooth and efficiently. So next, I'm just going to talk about my new and you. Oh, I'm sorry, I have tips before I talk about my new and you. So first, you want to just remember to not negotiate for too long. So this kind of goes back to the topic of how much is too much. If you waste too much time, it's going to be definitely money wasted and money lost on your end. So you want to kind of gauge on how much you can do before this process starts. And then probably the most important is to be honest. So being honest is probably common sense to everybody, but you want to be able to only promise things that you're going to be able to accomplish, because if you don't, you could be liable for breach of contract. So make sure you're only promising things you can actually do and don't sugarcoat anything that you won't be able to execute. So now for my new and you. So my first job, I've actually been working there for almost 6 years now, but when I started, I had to do a drug test and a few PPD shots. And what I thought was really interesting about doing this project and learning about what I used to do, they would kind of call me and make sure that my process was going as smooth as possible, which brings me into just applying it to my future as a human resources professional. So I'll definitely want to make sure in the future that I'm also calling and making sure that they schedule everything on time and they get everything needed for their start date, so this process can go a lot smoother. So that's definitely the biggest thing I learned from this presentation. So to summarize, Stephanie talked about the preliminary interview, Jake covered selection tests, Ryan discussed the employment interview, Megan went over references and background checks, David talked about the selection decision, and Sean talked about physical exams, and finally I talked about job offer and final selection. So thank you. I don't know.